Welcome back. It's been quite a week. So where does this go next? Let's bring back our panel. Syndicated columnist George Will, Steve Hayes, senior writer for the Weekly Standard, Mara Eliason, national political correspondent of National Public Radio, and syndicated columnist Charles Krauthammer. George, you heard Brigadier General Lovell testify up on the Hill. Your thoughts on that testimony and where that may take this whole thing?
Well, it was very affecting testimony, obviously painfully sincere, but it's going to take him and the military into an intramural argument, because he was saying in effect that the military did not do all that it could have done, and indeed this goes to the basic military ethic that you don't leave people on the battlefield. And he essentially said they did, and that's he had to know the dynamite he was handing out.
He also said, Steve, that the State Department was essentially in control and that they didn't try to go after them. They didn't know how long this attack was going to go, but they didn't try. Now, the ARB, the Accountability Review Board, the report by Admiral Mullen and Ambassador Pickering, said that the military was not prepared, in position to be able to respond in time. But your thoughts on Lovell and how that affects this?
Well, the ARB didn't talk to General Lovell. The ARB didn't talk to many of the people who were involved in this decision-making process, including Hillary Clinton and others. So I don't see the ARB as anything near definitive on these matters. I think what we heard from General Lovell, as George says, was terribly affecting. He was a voluntary witness. This was somebody who wanted to come and sort of unburden himself because he was there on the ground. He was the Deputy Intelligence Director. His job was to have knowledge. He dismissed right away the claims that this was about a video or that this had originated in some protest. That evening, he dismissed those claims. And I think the most troubling thing he said was when he was asked about whether it would have made a difference if the United States military had rushed to the aid of the people who were under attack in Benghazi. And after a long pause, he said, "We don't know." That's a terrible thing for a senior military officer, somebody who's been in for 33 years, to have to say about his country.
Mara.
Yes, although he's also pressed to say, were there some resources that weren't used? Is that what you're saying? And he said no. I think that this part of the story, the fact that there wasn't enough protection at the embassy, there might not have been the proper response after it started, and the reasons for that, that's something that there shouldn't be a partisan fight over. The talking points is something different because it's all involved with re-election politics.
And possibly, the politics of November of that year.
Right, but this is something different. I mean, when you have an American ambassador killed in a terrorist attack, I mean, that is really something. That can't happen. And, of course, the administration's argument is that the ARB's recommendations have been implemented and this should not happen again.
Charles.
But look, on the question, the searing question of could they have been saved, it isn't an answer to say, as some have concluded, and they could be right, that in retrospect they couldn't have been, given where our forces were positioned. But there was no way to know during the attack. Nobody would, there was no way to know it would be an 8 or 9 hour engagement and not an 18-hour engagement. So it raises the question, why was there no, given the fact that the length of the engagement was not known, what was done, was enough done, and then that brings you to the highest levels, the Secretary of State and then the President. And that brings the question, where were they during what was essentially the 3 a.m. phone call, which ironically was her attack on him as candidates? Well, the call came in, she was supposed to answer it, he was, and what was done?
Let's talk about candidates, political implication. Obviously, the big part of this story is 4 people died, including the U.S. ambassador, and people want answers. The fallout and how it impacts politics. Mara.
I think this cycle, very little. I don't think this is going to enter into any of these Senate races and the 10 or so battlegrounds. 2016, if Hillary Clinton runs, I think this is an issue.
Certainly, if she runs, it's an issue. But also, we're going to have a long argument, I hope, that will try and change the categories. We're talking now about, was it a protest, was it terrorism, and how long it took the president to say terrorism. I think it was neither. Obviously, it wasn't a protest. Terrorism is random violence. This was a military operation, probably an assassination. They wanted to kill an ambassador, which they did. And that's why, once we begin to sort out the categories, then we're going to have something to talk to Hillary Clinton about.
And this is bigger in the sense about terrorism. Remember, at the time, the president saying Al-Qaeda's decimated. They're on the run. If anything, Steve, we've seen these affiliates and core Al-Qaeda, as the administration likes to say, increase their lethal ability.
I think that's one of the reasons that the Benghazi issue continues to resonate, why it continues to be a discussion. In addition to the fact that we've gotten answers that just don't add up from the White House for so long, you also have the reality on the ground. I mean, the administration went to great lengths to make the argument that Al-Qaeda was on the run, that it had been decimated. It hadn't been decimated. It was clear, I think, to many people at the time that it hadn't been decimated, but it's certainly clear in retrospect that it hadn't been decimated, that Al-Qaeda was not on the run. We've seen it grow. We've seen it strengthen both, as you say, in the core and in the affiliates, and it remains a huge threat to this very day.
Charles.
But of course it's a terrorist attack. Terrorism is not so much randomness in a military attack. It's a military attack whose purpose is political. It's a statement. It's a political effect. You know, it is the sort of the words coming out of a gun. And here it had an entirely political effect, and it succeeded. It announced that Al-Qaeda was alive and well. It hastened the withdrawal of America entirely from any interest in Libya. And so in its essence, it was a way of saying it wasn't that the killing of an ambassador changes the course of a war, but it makes a statement that changes the psychology of the enemy, i.e. us. Of course it was a terrorist attack, and it was obvious in the first half hour.
As with many stories, it often takes time and persistence before the truth is known. With regard to Benghazi, we will remain on the case, poised to bring you the very latest, including any developments on a House Select Committee as soon as they happen. That's all for now. Thanks for watching, and good night.